So in first century Jerusalem, the legal code was, it was incredibly strict.
Oh, absolutely.
Like if a judge sentenced a man to death, that judge was actually required to fast for an entire day before the execution.
Right, which is pretty intense.
It really is. It was this whole system designed to make shedding blood, incredibly difficult. It was built to reflect the perfect justice of God.
Yeah, that was the intention anyway.
But then, on the night of Passover in AD 33, the highest court in the land just shredded every single one of their own laws to murder an innocent man in the dark.
They threw it all out the window.
They really did. And welcome to Reformed Thinking, your deep dive into the most fascinating and weighty texts.
Glad to be here.
So if you are listening to this right now, our goal today is to ask you to look at a scene that, honestly, most of us instinctively want to turn away from.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
We're zeroing in on a few short verses in Matthew 26, verses 67 and 68.
Some of the heaviest verses in Scripture.
Seriously. These two verses contain some of the most raw, violent, and highly theological moments in human history.
No question about it.
This is the mockery of the sovereign king.
Yeah.
It is a look at the absolute apex of human wickedness colliding with the staggering reality of divine condescension.
What's fascinating here is why this specific scene makes modern readers so uncomfortable.
Yeah, why do we shy away from it?
Well, we have to bring it out into the light, but we often prefer a sanitized, therapeutic version of the cross that, offends no one.
Right, a cross that looks good on a necklace.
Spot on. We like a narrative where Jesus is just this inspiring martyr who teaches us to be kind and forgiving.
Which is such a small view of what actually happened.
It is, because skipping this physical and verbal torment shields our eyes from the true cost of our justification.
Wow, yeah.
The Holy Spirit recorded these precise details in Matthew's Gospel so that the church would perceive the sheer hostility that the natural mind holds toward the absolute sovereignty of God.
It puts it right in our faces.
It does. Sin is not a polite weakness. It is not a misunderstanding.
Right, it's not just a slip-up.
No, it is active, boiling hatred toward divine authority.
That is a heavy thought for you to sit with as a listener.
And when God came near in the flesh, humanity did not crown him, Humanity struck him.
They battered him.
By confronting the filth thrown upon our substitute, we are forced to look into a mirror.
Because it's our filth.
Yes. To skip over this mockery is to fail to grasp the crushing weight of our sin, which means failing to comprehend the magnitude of God's grace in saving his elect.
To really understand the severity of this mockery, we have to set the scene properly.
We need the context.
Yeah, we have to shift from modern times back to first century Jerusalem.
Take us there.
I'm trying to grasp the psychology of this moment because it begins with this illegal, panicked, late-night tribunal.
Total chaos.
Right, and it is Passover. The city is just swelling with hundreds of thousands of pilgrims.
The population basically exploded during that week.
Exactly. The political tension is suffocating.
Mm-hmm.
Israel exists under the iron boot of Roman occupation, and they are governed locally by this puppet priesthood.
A priesthood that was terrified of losing its position.
Yes, and Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor, holds the sole right to capital punishment. It was called the jus gladii, the right of the sword.
Meaning the Jewish religious leaders cannot execute anyone legally?
So they have Jesus arrested in the garden, and they drag him to the private residence of Caiaphas, the high priest, in the dead of night.
Which is wildly illegal.
They are absolutely terrified of a popular uprising during the feast because, Jesus has massive crowds following him.
They knew the crowds loved him.
Right. So their goal is to force a guilty verdict before dawn so they can hand Pilate a completed capital case before the city even wakes up.
Total rush job.
But I am struggling to understand the sheer desperation here.
How so?
Well, these are men obsessed with the law, right? Why would they risk their entire reputations to break their own rules in the middle of the night?
They risked it because they viewed Jesus not as a theological debate, but as a total existential threat to their political hegemony and their control over the temple treasury.
Ah, follow the money and the influence.
Always. The illegality of this midnight tribunal cannot be overstated.
It was that bad.
Oh, yeah. The Sanhedrin, which was the supreme religious and legal council of Israel, operated under strict jurisprudential statutes.
They had rules for everything.
According to traditional Mishnaic law, specifically outlined in Tractate Sanhedrin, the parameters for a capital trial were incredibly rigid to prevent false executions.
Right, they wanted to be careful with human life.
In theory, yes. Capital cases were strictly forbidden from being tried at night.
Oh, wow.
A trial had to begin and end during the daylight hours, ensuring transparency before the public.
So the middle of the night thing is strike one.
Strike one for sure. Furthermore, a guilty verdict could never be handed down on the same day the trial began.
Wait, really?
Yeah, the judges were required to fast and deliberate for a full night before pronouncing a sentence of death.
So doing it in a few hours is strike two.
Exactly. On top of that, the court was legally required to meet in its official location, which was the Chamber of Hewn Stones within the temple precinct.
Not the high priest's living room.
Right. This chamber was located halfway between the secular court and the Holy of Holies, physically symbolizing that their justice was meant to bridge human law with divine holiness.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
They're supposed to be sitting in a chamber that represents the intersection of God's perfect justice and human law.
Right.
And instead, they drag him into Caiaphas's living room in the middle of the night.
A total mockery of the system.
It's like a corrupt referee changing the rules of the game in the final minute because the home team is losing,
That's a great way to put it.
It feels like they knew they could never secure a conviction in the daylight.
They absolutely couldn't have.
If they tried this in the Chamber of Hewn Stones during the day, the crowds would see the total lack of evidence.
The public would have rioted.
The false witnesses would be exposed to public scrutiny.
Right, they were contradicting each other left and right anyway.
So they just abandoned the very system they claim gives them their authority.
That is precisely what happened.
It's just wild.
They were absolutely forbidden from conducting official trials in the high priest's private residence.
Strike three.
Yet, the religious elite violated every single one of their own established statutes.
Every single one.
Their hatred for the truth demanded immediate clandestine action.
They had to hide it.
They could not wait for the daylight because the light exposes the truth. They needed the darkness to execute their conspiracy.
That says so much about their hearts.
It demonstrates that their outward religion was a complete facade covering a heart of utter depravity.
Total depravity on full display.
When fallen men reject the sovereign rule of Christ, they inevitably fall into moral and physical lawlessness.
Right.
They will weaponize religion to justify their own wickedness.
I think about the psychology of corrupt institutions.
It's a dark place to go.
When an institution realizes it is losing control, the first thing it does is rewrite the rules of engagement.
Yep, they moved the goalposts.
They claimed he was a blasphemer, but they threw out the entire law of God to secure a conviction.
Hypocrisy at its finest.
It shows that they did not actually care about blasphemy. They cared about retaining their own status.
Spot on.
And because they were willing to abandon all legal restraint in that midnight trial, it seems like a psychological dam just broke.
The floodgates opened.
Right. Once you decide the law no longer applies to you, there is nothing holding back the darkest impulses of the human heart.
That is the exact sequence of events.
It escalates so quickly.
Once the high priest tore his robes and officially declared Jesus guilty of blasphemy, they felt completely justified in crossing the line from corrupt judicial procedure into outright physical violence.
They basically gave themselves permission.
They created a false legal covering for their hatred. That false judgment led directly to the most degrading physical act possible in the ancient world, recorded in the very first part of Matthew 26, verse 67.
I have the text right here.
Go ahead.
The text says, then they spit in his face.
Yeah.
We read that phrase, then they spit in his face. And it is grotesque, but we need to grasp the full cultural and theological weight of it.
It's heavy.
In our modern context, spitting on someone is terrible, but in the ancient world, it carried a massive amount of ceremonial weight, did it not?
It carried an incalculable amount of cultural and religious weight.
Tell me about that.
The Greek vocabulary used by Matthew here exposes the severe nature of this scene.
Okay, let's look at the Greek.
The root word for spit is emptuo.
Emptuo.
Yeah, and it is a rare word, appearing only 6 times across the entire New Testament canon.
Wow, only 6 times.
In the ancient Greco-Roman world, as well as under Near Eastern custom, spitting in someone's face was the absolute lowest form of degradation.
The bottom of the barrel?
The face was considered the locus of honor, the seat of personal identity.
So to defile the face is to defile the person entirely.
Right. To spit directly into another's face was an act reserved for pariahs, criminals, and rebellious slaves.
Just shocking.
It was a calculated effort to inflict total social, emotional, and religious dishonor.
They wanted to ruin him.
They sought to reduce the King of Kings to a state of utter, visible pollution, treating him as an outcast cursed by God and rejected by man.
Does this tie back to the Old Testament?
Yes, in the Old Covenant, we see this in Numbers chapter 12, where God says that if a father spits in his daughter's face, she would bear her shame for 7 days and be shut out of the camp.
Oh, so it meant being cast out of the community.
Spitting was associated with severe ritual uncleanness and covenantal rejection.
Wow.
By expectorating upon him, the religious leaders were symbolically transferring the filth of rejection onto him.
I am struck by the sheer theological contrast here.
It's hard to even wrap your mind around.
Let's think about whose face they are spitting on.
Yeah, let's think about that.
This is the exact same face that's shown like the sun on the Mount of Transfiguration.
It's the very same face.
Just chapters earlier, Peter, James, and John fell on their faces in absolute terror because the blinding, unshielded glory of God was radiating from the face of Jesus Christ.
They couldn't even look at him.
And now, that same face is covered in human saliva.
It makes you sick to think about.
The creator of the universe allowed creatures to defile him.
Creatures he breathed life into.
The one who sustains the cosmos by the word of his mouth stood there and took it.
He just took it.
Think about the natural human reaction to being insulted, let alone being spit upon.
Oh, it's instant rage.
Right. The immediate rush of pride, the adrenaline, the absolute demand for self-defense and retaliation.
It's our default setting.
If someone spits on you, the natural response is violence.
Unquestionably.
Yet Christ, who has infinite authority, restrains himself completely.
The restraint of Christ in this moment is a staggering demonstration of his willing submission to the Father's plan of redemption.
He didn't flinch.
But looking at the action of the Sanhedrin, this scene shatters any illusion we might have about the basic goodness of humanity.
It totally destroys that idea.
Modern society tends to view sin as a polite weakness, a character flaw, or a simple mistake that can be remedied with a bit of moral education or therapy.
Like we just need to try harder.
Right, but this text proves that sin is not a mistake.
Not at all.
Sin is active, hateful hostility toward God.
That is the truth.
The hands that struck the Son of God represent our hands. The mouths that spat upon him represent our mouths.
I try to find an analogy for this kind of hostility, and it is difficult because it is so irrational.
It defies logic.
It's like a vandal sneaking into the Louvre just to throw acid on the most priceless, beautiful masterpiece in existence.
That's a powerful image.
You do not do that by accident.
Yeah.
You do it because you actively hate the beauty and want to destroy it.
You want to tear it down.
When the Sanhedrin spits in the face of Christ, they are proving that the natural human heart hates the pure holiness of God.
We despise the light because our deeds are evil.
The human creature, made by the Word, spits upon the incarnate Word.
It's tragic.
But contempt rarely stays at the level of insult.
No, it always escalates.
It never just stops at verbal or symbolic degradation. It quickly escalates into bodily harm, which takes us from the saliva to the fists of the Sanhedrin.
The text immediately moves from verbal and social degradation to physical assault.
What does the rest of the verse say?
Matthew 26, verse 67 continues, "And struck him, and some slapped him."
Struck and slapped.
We must distinguish the vocabulary here because it reveals the chaotic, unbridled rage of the religious elite.
Let's break down the Greek again.
Matthew uses two distinct verbs for the physical blows. The first verb is kolaphizo.
Kolaphizo.
This means to strike with a closed fist, to deliver bone-crushing blows intended to inflict deep bruising, physical trauma, and structural fracture.
So they're throwing real punches.
Hard punches. In Greco-Roman literature, this specific term was historically used for beating rebellious slaves into submission. Oh, wow. And remember, the men throwing these punches were the Sanhedrin members themselves. The scribes, the elders, the chief priests.
The politicians and scholars are brawling.
Yes. The second verb is erapizin, which describes open-handed slapping.
Which is different from a punch.
Very different. The Mishnah actually specifies fines for slapping someone with the back of the hand.
Because it's an insult.
Right, because it was a specific cultural insult designed to demean an equal or punish an inferior.
Ah, I see.
It seems the temple officers, the guards standing by, joined in with the open-handed slaps.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
All right, what do you see?
These religious elites, the scribes and the Pharisees, spent their entire lives obsessing over ceremonial cleanliness.
They washed their hands constantly.
Right. We read in the Gospels how they would avoid walking through certain marketplaces so their robes would not brush against a Gentile.
They were terrified of ritual impurity.
Terrified of becoming ceremonially unclean. Yet here they are, in the middle of the night, physically beating a bleeding man with their bare hands.
The hypocrisy is stunning.
They have abandoned all judicial dignity, turning a courtroom into a den of violent thugs.
They really did.
How does this happen? How do men obsessed with purity become brawlers in a matter of minutes?
It reveals the terrifying reality of corporate sin and self-righteousness.
Expand on that for us.
Earlier, we discussed how they declared him a blasphemer.
Yeah.
By slapping a legal and religious label of guilt onto Jesus, they sterilized their own violence.
Oh, so they felt justified.
They convinced themselves that they were executing the judgment of God, which allowed their true, violent, depraved nature to emerge without restraint.
That is so dark.
It operates on a psychological mechanism very similar to a mob acting as one.
You know, it reminds me of a firing squad.
A firing squad. Walk me through that.
In a firing squad, they often give one shooter a blank bullet.
Right, I've heard of that.
The idea is that no single individual has to bear the full weight of the execution, because anyone could tell themselves they fired the blank.
That makes total sense.
Corporate sin functions the same way. By acting as a mob, they diffuse the moral responsibility.
Everyone blames the group.
The individual sinner thinks his action is acceptable because the high priest, the esteemed elders, and the recognized scholars are doing the exact same thing.
They feed off each other's rage.
Cowardice hides in a crowd.
It really does. Those who were ordained to guard the holiness of God's sanctuary became the primary perpetrators of lawless physical violence against God's Son.
That is a staggering irony.
The irony is suffocating. They are physically beating the true Passover lamb while actively preparing to celebrate the Passover feast the very next day.
They created a moral blank bullet by declaring him a blasphemer together.
Exactly right.
Once they stripped him of his physical dignity with their fists and open hands, they realized that physical violence still wasn't enough.
Violence has its limits.
You can beat a man, but if he refuses to break, you haven't truly conquered him.
He was still standing firm.
To truly discredit a Messiah in front of the crowd, they had to dismantle his spiritual authority.
They had to ruin his reputation.
Is that why they moved to the blindfold next?
Precisely. Which brings us to verse 68, the blasphemous parlor trick.
The parlor trick?
They have spit on him, they have beaten him, and now they mock his offices prophet, priest, and king.
What do they do?
The parallel gospel accounts tell us they blindfolded him.
Okay.
Then they issue the sarcastic command in Matthew, "Prophesy to us, you Christ. Who is it that struck you?"
Such a mocking tone.
They weaponized his supreme title, O Christ, in bitter sarcasm.
Which means Messiah, right?
Christ means Messiah, the anointed one. By mocking him with this title, they are mocking the covenant promises of God made to David.
They are mocking God himself.
They demand that he exercise divine omniscience to identify his attackers while blindfolded.
It is such a juvenile, taunting game.
It really is.
Like, if you are really the Son of God, tell us who just hit you.
It is juvenile, but it exposes a debased, wicked view of Revelation.
How so?
They treat prophecy as a trivial demonstration of hidden knowledge, a parlor trick to entertain the wicked.
Like a magic show.
They demand an immediate subjective sign to satisfy their skepticism, treating the Son of God like a carnival mystic.
That completely misses the point of prophecy.
True biblical prophecy was never given to entertain the curious or validate the wicked.
No.
It is the authoritative, infallible declaration of God's objective truth concerning redemption.
When I read that scene, the injustice of it just makes my blood boil.
It's infuriating.
If I were in that situation, and I possessed the omniscient ability of the Son of God, I would have instantly called out their name.
Oh, flesh wants to fight back.
I would have called out their secret sins right there in the courtyard.
Put them to open shame.
I would have pointed through the blindfold and said, "You are Caiaphas, and you stole from the treasury last week. You are Malchus, and you harbor hatred in your heart."
That would have silenced them.
I would have proved them wrong on the spot to vindicate my own honor and shut their mouths forever.
But he doesn't.
Why doesn't he do that? Why does God refuse to validate skeptics who demand subjective signs and entertainment instead of submitting to the objective written word?
Because if Christ had answered them, he would have validated their corrupt premise.
He would have played their game.
He would have reduced the prophetic office to a mechanism for satisfying human unbelief.
And God doesn't owe us a performance.
Unbelief does not arise from a lack of sufficient evidence, you know. It arises from a hardened heart that hates the light.
That is so true for us today.
Giving them a sign would not have produced genuine faith. It would have only entertained their mockery.
They would have just asked for another trick.
Furthermore, we must synthesize this entire event with the Old Testament.
Right, going back to the text.
While they mocked his offices, they were entirely blind to the fact that their very mockery was fulfilling objective prophecy in real time.
They didn't even realize it.
Isaiah 50, verse 6 states, I gave my back to the smiters and my cheeks to them that plucked off the hair. I hid not my face from shame and spitting.
Written hundreds of years earlier.
And Micah chapter 5, verse 1 says they will strike the judge of Israel with a rod on the cheek.
So they are demanding a new prophecy to prove he's the Messiah, completely ignorant that their physical abuse is acting out the exact prophecies written centuries prior that identify him as the Messiah.
That is the astonishing irony.
It's mind-blowing.
The mockers demanded a new prophecy while fulfilling the old ones.
Wow.
Christ's silence was not a failure of prophecy. It was the ultimate act of obedience.
That silence is staggering.
It speaks louder than words.
He had legions of angels at his disposal. He stated that fact clearly in the Garden of Gethsemane just hours earlier.
He could have wiped them out.
He could have spoken a single syllable and incinerated the entire palace, the city of Jerusalem, and the Roman Empire.
It's just a breath.
But he remained silent. This is the silent majesty of the substitute.
Beautifully said.
And we have to contrast what is happening inside the palace with what is happening outside in the courtyard.
With Peter.
Right. Inside, Christ stands steadfast, absorbing physical and verbal abuse from the most powerful man in the nation, refusing to deny his identity.
He holds the line.
Outside, Peter, the boldest disciple, the one who promised to die with him, is crumbling before a servant girl, denying he even knows Jesus.
The contrast is heartbreaking.
Christ is perfectly faithful, where we are entirely faithless.
That contrast highlights a vital theological concept, which is passive obedience.
Passive obedience. Let's dig into that.
According to Reformed theology, Christ perfectly executed the office of a mediator through both his active and his passive obedience.
Wait, let me stop you there, because when the modern ear hears the word passive, we assume it means doing nothing.
Right, sitting on the couch.
We hear passive and think of someone who is weak, someone who just lets life happen to them.
A victim.
But theologically, passive implies something entirely different here, right?
Yeah.
It is about enduring a penalty.
That is a crucial clarification. In theology, the term passive comes from the Latin root pathio, which means suffering or enduring.
Ah, like the passion of the Christ.
Exactly. It does not mean inactivity.
That makes sense.
Active obedience refers to his perfect law-keeping throughout his entire life, fulfilling every righteous requirement of God's law to earn a perfect record for his people.
He lived the life we couldn't live.
Passive obedience refers to his willing submission to the penalty of sin, bearing the wrath and curse of God in our place.
He paid the debt we owed.
Christ didn't simply die on the cross. His entire path, absorbing the covenant curse of uncleanness, taking the bone-crushing blows, standing silent before corrupt men, was a substitutionary act for his elect.
It was all part of the atonement.
He was treated as vile so that vile sinners could be clothed in perfect righteousness.
The great exchange.
He bore the shame so that we might inherit eternal glory.
So what does this all mean for how we view salvation?
It changes everything.
We talk about the cross, but how does this specific scene of mockery shape our understanding of the atonement?
It completely refutes several modern theological errors that plague the visible church.
Like what?
First, it confronts the idea that man is the final arbiter of his own salvation.
The idea that God is just waiting on us to make a choice.
Right. Christ did not beg the Sanhedrin for their cooperation.
No, he didn't.
He did not ask for their permission to save them. He sovereignly submitted to suffering in order to definitively save his sheep.
He accomplished it.
His work is entirely sufficient, entirely independent of human assistance.
Amen to that.
Furthermore, it confronts the assertion that the sacrifice of Christ must be continually reoffered or added to by our own works.
Oh yeah, the idea that Jesus didn't finish the job.
The passive obedience of Christ was final, complete, and unrepeatable.
Once and for all.
He stood as our representative, finishing the work given to him by the Father.
He didn't need us to finish it for him.
He absorbed the entirety of the hostility required to satisfy divine justice.
I am trying to picture the mechanics of this substitution.
Give us a picture.
It is like a parent quietly absorbing the furious, flailing punches of a toddler without striking back, though the disparity in strength is massive.
That's a good way to frame it.
But here, the parent is the eternal Son, and the toddler is is a wicked council demanding his death.
A council he could have crushed.
He lets the law exhaust its fury on his own body so that the traitors can be legally pardoned.
The weakness is an illusion.
The silence is actually the execution of an ironclad legal transaction.
He is all going according to plan.
How does this scene completely dismantle the prosperity gospel notion that visible weakness or suffering contradicts divine favor?
The prosperity gospel teaches that if you have enough faith, you will be shielded from physical pain, public shame, and poverty.
Health and wealth.
Right. It equates worldly triumph and visible success with God's blessing.
Which is a lie.
But this text shatters that false teaching.
Yes, it does.
The sinless Son of God, who had infinite faith and perfect favor with the Father, was subjected to the most humiliating, violent degradation possible.
He was completely broken in the eyes of the world.
God's wisdom triumphs through what man despises.
So true.
The cross and the events leading to it prove that the path appointed by God often involves severe suffering.
We have to embrace that.
The visible weakness of Christ in the high priest's palace was not a suspension of God's plan. It was the exact mechanism by which God's sovereign plan of redemption was accomplished.
Looking at the silent majesty of the mocked Messiah forces a critical look inward.
It should convict us.
If you are listening to this right now, it is very easy to look back at Caiaphas, the scribes, and the guards and think, what monsters?
We love to judge them.
But you have to ask yourself how often you demand that God validates himself to you on your terms, just like they demanded a prophecy.
We do the same thing.
We have to bring this into our current context. This is the mirror of the Sanhedrin.
It reflects our own hearts.
Sinners today still express rejection of God by despising the face of Christ and demanding he perform for them.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we see that modern pragmatism commits the exact same sin as the religious elite.
Pragmatism in the church.
We might not physically spit on Jesus, but when the visible church treats his sovereign commands as outdated suggestions that must be altered to attract the culture, it joins the Sanhedrin in mocking his lordship.
That is a harsh reality.
When congregations demand worldly entertainment over the faithful, expositional preaching of the word, they are essentially demanding that Christ perform a parlor trick for their amusement.
Make us laugh, keep us entertained.
They are shouting, prophesy to us, but do it on our terms, make it relevant, make it fun, make it palatable.
It is like looking at a massive, towering skyscraper and deciding that the visible steel beams in the lobby look too industrial and harsh for the new tenants.
So what do?
The management decides to strip out the load-bearing steel and replace it with papier-mâché columns painted to look like marble.
It might look nice for a minute.
All right, it looks fantastic to the focus group, but the moment a storm hits, the entire structure collapses, crushing everyone inside.
Because there's no substance.
By demanding relevance and ignoring the sharp, objective truth of the word, we are stripping out the load-bearing steel of the gospel.
We lose the foundation.
We are asking Christ to perform for us rather than bowing to his supreme authority.
We want a tame lion.
We strip the gospel of its offense, and in doing so, we strip it of its salvation.
True faith does not look for a religion without offense.
The cross is offensive.
True faith embraces the Christ who bore the shame.
That has to.
For the believer who holds fast to confessional, objective truth, this text is a massive reserve of strength.
An anchor for the soul.
When the world heaps scorn upon believers, when they are mocked for refusing to compromise with secular ideologies, they must realize they are walking the precise path the king walked first.
We shouldn't be surprised by it.
The disciple is not above the master.
No, we are not.
The Sanhedrin's mockery did not invalidate Christ's identity. It confirmed it.
That's a great point.
Likewise, the world's hostility toward faithful Christians does not prove the church is wrong. It confirms that the church belongs to a rejected king.
We have covered so much ground today. Let's summarize the progression of this horrific yet glorious scene.
Let's review.
It starts with an illegal, panicked, late-night court where the judges break every rule of jurisprudence to secure a murder.
The Midnight Tribunal.
It moves to horrific physical degradation. The sovereign creator taking spit directly to the face, absorbing the covenantal curse of uncleanness.
Total humiliation.
Then comes the unhinged violence. The bone-crushing blows from the fists of the religious elite and the stinging slaps of the guards.
The mob mentality taking over.
Next, they demand a blasphemous parlor trick, weaponizing his title and mocking the very concept of prophecy.
Demanding a sign on their terms.
And through it all, we witness the stunning, substitutionary silence of the Son of God, absorbing the penalty of the law to clothe his elect in perfect righteousness.
As we conclude, I want to leave you with a chilling but glorious reality.
Leave the listener with a final thought.
The Lamb who stood silent in the palace of Caiaphas will not remain silent forever.
No, he won't.
The face that was once covered in human spit in the dead of night will one day return on the clouds of heaven.
Come, Lord Jesus.
When he returns, that face will shine with a blinding judicial glory that will consume his enemies.
A terrifying day for those who reject him.
He will not come to be judged, but to judge the living and the dead.
The ultimate reversal.
The men who threw those punches, the high priest who tore his robes, they will all stand before the one they struck.
They will have to answer for it.
This raises an unavoidable reality for every soul listening. Which side of the tribunal will you stand on when that day comes?
A question we all have to face.
Will you stand with the mockers, trusting in your own self-righteousness? Or will you take refuge in the silent substitute who bore the shame for sinners?
That is a reality that demands a verdict from every single one of us.
It demands a response.
Thank you for joining Reformed Thinking for this deep dive into the text. We encourage you to open your Bible and read Matthew chapter 26 on your own.
See it for yourself.
Consider the weight of what was purchased for you. Look at the shattered landscape of human depravity, and then look at the absolute precision of Christ's redeeming work. See you next time.